Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is our Rise News analyst, Emmanuel Efeni, the great Malabite.
Yes, good morning, Ruben.
Good morning.
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, let's start the review with this day Nigeria's newspaper of record. Before the lead story, just above the lead story, Atiku, Yakubu's promise of credible global poll medicine after death. We are still consulting, searching for legal team, says PDP campaign, to file petition after inspection of election materials. Commences protest in Abuja over presidential election. Yes, Atiku Abubakar, yes, still reeling from the outcome of the February 25 presidential poll. Responding to the promise by INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, that Saturday governorship election will be different. Beavers will be used. Everything will be in place, working towards credible governorship election. Of course, I don't blame Atiku if he doesn't believe the INEC chair, because if INEC fails again in terms of logistic, use of beavers on Saturday, then the name Mahmoud Yakubu may just become a metaphor for unkept promise. Well, the lead story now, race for Senate President in 10th National Assembly kicks off. Lawan, Kalu Jibrin, Akpabio, Shomole Yari, Umahi, high top job. APC moves to avoid Muslim/Muslim leaders. Yes, talking about, of course, the president-elect and the vice president-elect, both Muslim. Chairman of party, Muslim. Can they afford to have another Muslim as Senate president? Well, perhaps the APC will look more at the geopolitics of it, zoning, as it were. One zone has taken the presidency, another zone, the vice presidency. Now, other key positions available: Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Senate President, and of course, Speaker of the House of Representatives. And you add to the mix, who is the Chief Justice of Nigeria? Then you talk of how you spread the positions. These are key positions in government, and of course, not just the executive, we're talking about government generally now. What are those in the race? Well, if it were to go to Southeast, perhaps to placate the Southeast that made strong showing in the presidential election, as it were, through Peter Obi, who is of Igbo extraction. Then you say, perhaps let's just go to the Southeast. Then Kalu, Uzo Ojikalu, yes, will feature very well. Of course, he's been campaigning. He campaigned for Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He even took the campaign to the election day, where he also flaunted his, of course, his ballot paper. Although that vote, I don't know whether that vote counted from what we saw. Now, there is also the proposal or the projection that perhaps they will need to compensate the Northwest for delivering so much to Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his vice president-elect. Then you'll be talking of not current Senate President, who is from the Northeast definitely, but Senator Jibrin, who is the current chair of the Senate Appropriation Committee, who is from the Northwest. As for Senator Lawan, somebody, what is he doing in the list? Will Tinubu want to have him as the Senate President in the 10th Assembly? Well, if I were him, I would consider him. Because he has, if only he can give that pledge, anything will pass under my watch. I would consider him if I were Tinubu, but I don't know whether he will make that pledge again. But let's just move on to other stories because we have limited time. The Punch newspaper, presidential poll, PDP governors leaders to protest at INEC today. PDP insists election flawed. APC urges peaceful demonstration. Residents fear unrest. Hoodlums hijack. Police promise protection. Now, the Nigerian Tribune also has that story. PDP to protest at INEC. Direct members to dress in black. Now, the New Telegraph newspaper, from Azikiwe to Tinubu, how president emerged since independence. INEC failure to upload February 25 polls result in real-time unlawful. Lawyers are saying, well, will they take that to the courts? Now, the Nation newspaper, Tinubu's pledge to Nigerians. I will not disappoint you. My certificate of return is a World Cup trophy. President-elect says in Lagos. Yes, the president-elect visited the Oba of Lagos yesterday, Oba Kiolu, where he made that statement. Now, the leadership newspaper, lobbying for appointment in Tinubu's presidency begins. Of course, trust politicians, they will start immediately. Now, the other story of the day, Naira. Now, the Guardian newspaper, e-payment channels fail stress test despite banks' 901 billion naira profit. Yes, no respite from apps, USSD platforms as failure reaches peak after 100 billion naira investment. Concerns as hackers wipe 2.9 billion naira from fintech firm. Now, telecoms operators absorb self of banking crisis. NIBSS keep mum on rate of e-payment transaction failures. Experts task financial institutions on secure e-payment space. Now, the Vanguard newspaper, Supreme Court ruling, uncertainty as banks wait on CBN. We can't reissue old notes without CBN directives, banks are saying. Say CBN takes the directives from the president. Reissue old notes immediately to reduce suffering. Stakeholders are urging the CBN. Now, if you look at the Daily Independent newspaper, pressure mounts on CBN to obey Supreme Court ruling. Yes, the Abuja Inquirer are also reporting on cash crunch. FCT residents await CBN. They are not the only one. All around the country, people are waiting for CBN to say something and do something about the Supreme Court ruling. Now, the Daily Sun newspaper, US opens up on February 25 poll, says whole electoral process failed to meet Nigerians' expectation. Backs desire for responsive, inclusive governance. Now, the foreign newspapers quickly, we'll just take two. The Times of London, migrants on small boats to be barred from Britain. Yes, a new law will be promulgated. And the terms, according to that law, tens of thousands face detention in a £3 billion pounds plan. Yes, and of course, asylum seekers who arrive on small boats will be removed from Britain and prohibited from returning or claiming citizenship under this new law. But not everybody will agree with the Prime Minister and, of course, the Home Secretary, Berberman, who are the ones pushing this. Yes, the Guardian newspaper is reporting small boats clamp down unworkable, Sunak told. Yes, some within the cabinet are already telling the Prime Minister, this, your new policy, will not work. Ruben, Rufai, and Ayo.
The main concern about the clampdown not being workable is that there could be a lot of human rights violations. That's just a concern. But, you know, the UK have been complaining about crossings across the English Channel. And, you know, the problems that this has created for the Home Office. But the major area of contention is about human rights violations, people being put into detention. And the proposed legislation, which Prime Minister Sunak is supposed to present, going as far as saying, look, if you violate the law, you could be barred for life. But I wanted to draw attention to two different things. On the front page of the Times of London today, I saw the photograph of Boris Johnson there with his father, Stanley Johnson. And the main story is saying that in his resignation honors list, Boris Johnson has included his father, Stanley Johnson, for knighthood. And he's presenting the longest list of about 100. Theresa May before him presented 60. David Cameron before him presented 62 names. But the main issue is how, he's using his position to promote family members. In the year 2020, he made his brother Joe, who was a former minister, he made him a peer. He's now Lord Johnson of Marylebone. Now this time around, it's his father that is recommending. If that were to happen in Nigeria here, we will be up in arms. Yeah. We will say, oh, this is nepotism. Yes. This is cronyism. He wants to give, peerage, knighthood to his own father.
I hope you are not recommending something, Robert.
Just to show that, it happens elsewhere too. And finally, one major development with regard to, the High Sea Treaty. 200 countries of the world finally agreed on the High Sea Treaty, under the principle of the common heritage of mankind. And is seen as the biggest breakthrough in conservation to protect that common heritage of mankind from mindless exploitation. So it's a major breakthrough after the International Convention on the Law of the Sea, 1958, the Implementation Agreement of 1994, and then now you have this IC treaty that has been endorsed by 200 countries after 10 years of negotiations.
I mean, it's a good one, as regards, preserving the sea. And if memory serves me well, the very first time that laws were even put together as regards the administration of the sea should be the 1600s when Grocio wrote the Free Sea book, and it was just a couple of laws as regards how nations interplayed with the sea. But for Boris Johnson, I'm really surprised that he has the temerity to do this, owing to the fact that his past has been very scandalous. And Dr. Bati, let's call it what it is, not because it's happening in the UK, it is nepotism, pure and simple. Boris Johnson is wrong to be able to use power to aggrandize himself, owing to the fact that revelations are now coming out through the text messages and WhatsApp messages of Mr. Hancock, how government pretty much killed people in the UK, how they didn't obey simple laws, how they took many decisions up the run that were not scientifically backed up, how the shenanigans happen in the UK. And it's an egg on the face of the UK. It just shows, I think a lot of people say the UK is a third world country. It is worse than a third world country as regards the administration of things with COVID. And it is obvious and it is evident how much the Tory government has failed the UK. So Boris Johnson doing this, I'm not surprised. It's just an extension, of the nepotism and of the level of corruption that went up in his government. There are still investigations going on as regards COVID money was even spent in the first place. Now you want to make Stanley Johnson knighthood?
Let me just say that with regards to the boats and the laws, there's nothing as an illegal asylum seeker based on the UN's Human Rights Convention, particularly with regards to refugees. Everyone who faces persecution has the right to...
People fleeing war.
People fleeing war, yes, has a right to seek asylum in a host country. So this will be... I doubt very much if this will pass because a number of human rights activists, a number of even Tory members are opposing it.
Including their children?
They've had a long line with regards to how they treat refugees and asylum seekers in the UK. This will not fly.
Except that there is a political dimension to it. Some senior Tories are saying that if it goes through, it will make the Tories stand a better chance of winning the next election. Thank you very much, Emmanuel Efeni.